96% of the gap in performance can be explained by participation. 96% can be explained by participation. If you take nothing else from this entire project, if you don't listen to any of the interviews, if you ignore me, participation is the key. It is the golden ticket. Hey friends, Sophie and I are coming to you today with a video about biological sex differences and how it affects chess. So, you ready, Soph? You ready to tell them? You ready to tell them all about it? Yeah. Before we get into talking about the barriers that women face and how we can eliminate those, first we need to talk about biology. Not because it's a difference. Spoiler alert, it's not. But because it comes up all the time. It comes up in every comment thread, in any post involving a woman. Every day we see this. And sometimes it's, implicit, and sometimes it's explicit and nasty. So we need to deal with it, right? We need to, really look at the literature and see what it says. What do you think? Do you agree? You agree? Okay. Okay. We know, for example, why does it come up? Well, for one thing, there is a biological difference between men and women when it comes to physical sports, right? And I don't think that's going to surprise or upset anybody that, males of our species are generally larger and stronger and faster, um, generally, but chess is not a physical sport, right? And yet we have women's titles and women's sections, which is difficult to explain to family and friends of any chess player when they say, why does this exist? Why are these sections and titles exist? When men and women should be the same, right? Cognitively? Well, and that's a long and complicated answer, right? So, don't like the licks. I don't like the licks, but I like you. Um, okay, so Kasparov was famous. He gave an interview for Playboy magazine where he said that all women are weak and stupid compared to men. They shouldn't play chess, they're like beginners. They lose every single game against a man. Oh no, I'm sorry. That's Bobby Fischer. I'm mixing up the quotes. Okay, so that was Bobby Fischer. And then Kasparov said, I have said there is real chess and women's chess. Some don't like to hear this, but chess does not fit women properly. It's a fight, a big fight, and it's not for women. Women are weaker fighters. So both Fischer and Kasparov did change their minds later in their lives. And Kasparov now is a champion of women's chess. But when the world champion says that, he said that in 1989, and Fischer his quote in 1962. Those are a generation apart. And they're the world champions, and those are the things that they're saying, and that filters down, that filters out. The strongest players in the world are saying women don't have a spot, women can't hack it. And we know that isn't true, but because these guys say that, it really is, there's a big impact, right? So we're going to talk today. It's going to be a bit more detail about just about gender, okay? So let's get into the studies. So first is a meta-analysis. This is an analysis of hundreds of other studies combined into one analysis of those. I think it was 100 and something. I can't remember. Different studies. This is Dr. Janet Shibley Hyde from the University of Wisconsin, and she analyzed 128 variables between the genders and grouped them into 6 categories. Those that were cognitive variables, those that assessed verbal or nonverbal communication, those that assessed social or personality variables, those that measured psychological well-being like self-esteem, um, motor behaviors such as throwing distance, and miscellaneous constructs like moral reasoning. So, and then she calculated the size of the effect of each variable and classified them as either close to zero, small, moderate, large, or very large. Found that 78% of the differences, of all these 128 variables, are either small or close to zero. And no surprise, the largest variables had to do with physical strength. Throwing distance was the biggest one. Yeah, and she also made a note that a lot of these variables differ based on context. Um, so, for example, males were found to be more physically aggressive, and females were found to be more relationally aggressive. Um, but people behave differently around strangers than they do around friends or family, and so there's really a lot of even though that is kind of generally true, there can be still a lot of variability based on context. So, yeah, the large size differences were that females were generally more agreeable, and that the males are generally had a higher grip strength, throwing velocity, and throwing distance. Um, and then, funnily enough, that's not being agreeable. I don't think is really related to chess, and throwing distance certainly isn't. Um, Also not the other large differences. Males are more likely to have positive attitudes about casual sex, and males are more likely to masturbate. So none of those factors really explain the gender disparity in chess. Okay. The only one, and this has been mentioned in other places, the only factor that might contribute to differences in chess were males' reported advantage in mental rotation, being able to rotate shapes in their minds, right? Um, so let's look at it. So that was the Hyde meta-analysis. So talking about mental rotation, it's interesting. So first, it is the ability to rotate an object in your mind. I mean, the objects that they used, I mean, they're silly shaped objects. I mean, it's like it's not a stapler, but it's stuff like little, little funny looking shapes. They're not chess pieces. It's certainly not a whole chess board. It's just like, it's little things like that. And they're kind of like in space, kind of tweaked weird. And then there's some other objects, that are kind of wonky. And you have to pick one that is the correct that matches the thing, the original, but that is just rotated some kind of way. But the funny thing is that there are actually 3 different tests that measure mental rotation. And so we're going to go through this. It's a little bit dry, but it's important because the most recent studies, this is Jost and Jansen, 2024. And I think they're German. Doesn't matter. They actually did a study that this sort of debunked some of this. All right, so there's 3 studies. There's the SM tests. They're called SM because they're based on research by Shepard and Metzler. There's the VK, the Vandenberg Qs, and then the new one is Jost and Jansen, JJ. So, and they're all a little bit different. So the original SM, Shepard and Metzler, would present two objects which are either rotated or mirrored. And that was the test, right? Which one? You have to pick the right one. If they ask for a rotated one, you pick a rotated. If they ask for a mirrored one, you pick a mirrored. Well, before I go any further, so on that test, the Shepard-Metzler, the rotated or mirrored, there's no gender difference. Male and female participants, they're performed the same. So moving on, Vandenberg-Hughes compared a target object with other options that are either rotated, mirrored, or just structurally different. Like, instead of an L, maybe it's a V or something. And that did have a gender difference, and male participants did perform better on that one. And these tests have been used since 1971 for the SM and 1978 for the VK without any changes. That's kind of a long time. So the new test, the JJ test, was created 2020 and compared one target with two alternatives, each of which are mirrored to each other. So one is rotated to the target and one is mirrored. It's kind of hard to explain without seeing them. It doesn't really matter that much. Okay, so on the JJ test, sex differences were also not observed. There were no sex differences there. So then what Jost and Janssen, JJ, did is they said, well, hang on, if two of these tests are not producing any sex differences, maybe what's going on here is not that men and women have different abilities to rotate things in their mind. Maybe the problem is the tests. Maybe the tests are wonky some kind of way and are, sort of artificially producing these results. And so what they did is they created a new test, sort of not a new kind of test, but it was a test that they gave to 838 adults. And the test consisted of a mix of the three types of questions, the SM, the VK, and the JJ questions. They mixed them all together. And so, to figure out, well, is there still going to be a difference? There wasn't really a difference. What they said is the gender differences were unexpectedly small. The study found the sex differences of the mixed question test were so small as to call into question whether a sex difference existed at all, and led the researchers to wonder whether historical differences, the ones that we've been relying on for 50 years, may be attributed to the design of the test rather than inherent biological differences. Okay? Geez, I hope this little fuzzy mic is working. I'm trying the fuzzy mic today. I see people using it. And I think I told you with the tech stuff, I'm kind of a neophyte. So hopefully this sounds okay. Okay. So, all right. So interesting. So two things to think about here. Like one, and it's a real question. Like, is there even a difference between men and women and in mental rotation ability? Because I mean, it seems like, for decades we've thought yes there is, and that men are a little better at it. And now maybe not. Maybe it's just down to the test, and there isn't actually a difference. So that's question one. Like, is there even a difference? There might not be. And that's still kind of an open question. It's kind of a new open question after this JJ research. So is there a difference at all? And then two, like, does it affect chess? That's what we hear about. Like, does it affect chess? And I think you'd really have to stretch to say that it did affect chess, because the shapes that are on these tests I mean, no kidding. They're like Tetris shapes. They're just kind of like wonky little blocks, and then they kind of like rotate them or then flip them. And like you look at them and you think, well, like it's kind of interesting to think about, like, but a chessboard is not a wonky little shape that's flipped. It's really complicated. There's pieces all over. Um, and it's not just one thing that you have to like flip in your mind or rotate. I guess you could rotate it, but really what the mind is trying to do is maneuver, the individual pieces on the plane instead of flipping the entire plane or rotating the entire plane. So I think it's a real stretch to say that this even is applicable to chess. Um, so so the mental rotation thing, and it's kind of from what I've read, it's kind of, the people who say that this is a big deal in chess, I think it's way overstated. Especially considering the JJ research kind of raises the question as to whether there is any difference at all. And of course, how much difference this makes, when you're thinking about a chessboard. I think it's a real reach. Um, so that's mental rotation. Let's talk about general intelligence, just across the board. And I listened to a really interesting episode of, it's a couple years old now, I'm behind, but of Chess Feels, the Chess Feels podcast. Great podcast. Highly recommended. Shout out to Chess Feels. Um, and they were, it was just an aside. But Dr. Julia was basically saying, like, what is intelligence? Like, is it IQ? Is it something else? Where does it live? Does it live in the mind or the soul? Or the balls was the joke that someone had made. I can't remember. Um, but anyway, so you know, here's an example. I'm going to tell you about a study that talked about intelligence as IQ, as like an actual written test. So um, the the study here is called "Does Chess Need Intelligence?" Um, and here's a quote that I really liked from it. This is Bialich, McLeod, and Gobet. The links to all of these are on the Substack. So if you want to go read them, it's good stuff. It's in the weeds, but if you're here watching me, you're interested in this, and it's on the Substack. So, okay. Despite being an apparently obvious example of a purely intellectual activity, for more than a century, researchers have largely failed to connect success at chess with any intellectual ability. Meaning, we're not even sure if you have to be smart to play chess. Which is kind of funny. We all kind of like, we all know that is sort of in the zeitgeist, the idea that you have to be smart to play chess, or that chess players are smart. Um, but that might not necessarily be true. It is kind of a correlation, but it might just be correlated because people who enjoy intellectual things also gravitate toward this. Not that, you know, you have to be smart, not that intelligence causes success. So, and this study, it kind of bears that out. Very interesting. So before I get into the study, is there any difference in intelligence between men and women? The answer is no. Dr. Earl Hunt of Cambridge says men and women are essentially equal in general intelligence. They may differ in their performance on particular tests, um, and the residual abilities, but no, they're essentially equal in general intelligence. So, I think when he's talking about particular tests, that might be, well, for example, we know from the meta-analysis, math is an interesting example. In earlier primary school, um, girls are better at math. By high school, and this is all generalities, this is like population level studies, right? So obviously this is, individuals will have different mileage. By high school, boys are better at math than girls. It kind of switches. And then post high school, it sort of comes back together and it's pretty even from then on out. So, stuff like that. It's just, just interesting. And speaking of math, stereotype threat and lift. That has that appears in chess. Of course, we're going to talk about it. It appears in math. It appears in the rotation tests. There was a different study that where they told women, you're not going to be good at this mental rotation test, and they told the men, you're going to be good at this mental rotation test. And the women performed worse, and the men performed better. So, I mean, stereotype threat is a thing. Not just it's a thing everywhere, and it's not always men getting better and women getting worse. I mean, sometimes it's the other way around. It's just in our world here, we're talking about chess, and so that's what we're talking about. So, so general intelligence, no difference. Okay. But does what about when it comes to chess? Is how much does intelligence shape chess success? And the question is kind of like, we don't know, right? So here's the study. 2006, they studied some children in 4 different schools and had them and measured them on a couple different things. That first, they measured their chess performance. They basically gave them like a tactics, a game of a bunch of tactics problems, a recall chess where the students were assigned to reconstruct positions, and they called it a knight's row task, in which the students were to transfer as fast as possible the knight from one corner of the board, A1, to H1, but they had to visit each square between the two. So you had to go A1, boop, boop, boop to B1, boop, boop, boop to C1, D1, and all the way over to H1. So you had to like do that as quick as you could. So that's how they measured chess performance. They measured intelligence by giving them these tests. This must have been in Britain because these tests, I think they're British. It doesn't matter. Vocabulary, block design, symbol search, and digit span combined into like a composite IQ. Okay, so they measured their chess performance. They measured their intelligence, and most importantly, they logged how much practice they were doing using parent verified diaries. This wasn't just taking the kids' words for it. The parents verified their diaries, and they conducted interviews of the kids and the parents, and logged, their total hours of practice and their total years of experience. So, sort of 4 factors: years of experience, hours of practice, intelligence, chess performance. Okay. So, when they tested the whole sample of children, there was a moderately positive correlation between intelligence and chess, which has been found before. Like it's a moderate correlation. They had a separate sample. So within the large sample, they had a separate sample of elite students. And these were basically like tournament level, like strong club players, players that competed. They did say the ratings for them. It was like, 15, 1600. I think there was a couple kids who were like 18, 1900. So, strong for kids. Um, and, and in that elite subset, there was a negative correlation between intelligence and chess performance. The smartest, the highest IQ kids were kind of performing at the bottom of the elites. I mean, they were still in the elite group, but it was flipped. So kind of interesting. I mean, who knows? Who knows what that means? I mean, there still is a moderate correlation overall. So, if you were born real smart, maybe you will have a tendency to do a little bit better in chess. You're probably going to have a tendency to do a little bit better across the board if you have above average intelligence. But, elite players aren't necessarily the strongest players. And it's funny because, we see interviews, and I don't want to bag anybody. I think they're funny. There's some TikToks out there, YouTube videos, whatever, of, interviews with strong players, top 10 type, top 20 players that ask them questions. And I think they do it to be funny. They're asking them like trivia questions, right? And there's like basic trivia that these guys don't know, or some of them don't know how to drive. And and it's funny. It's like, okay, well, like you're the best in the world at chess, and yet there are pretty clear gaps in other areas. Um, and I don't know. I mean, there's no judgment here. It's just like it's just interesting to say, okay, well, clearly there is some sacrifice maybe, and that gets to the practice. Okay, so that's why I say it's the most important thing. So in this sample, the boys outperformed the girls in chess performance. Just raw performance, the boys were better. They also found that the boys practiced more. They put in more hours. And that when that was, when they mathed it out, the statistics, and I don't know how I'm not a statistic, I'm a lawyer. I don't know how to do math. I could learn, but I don't know. They always say in these studies, when we controlled for whatever, so when they controlled for hours of practice, the chess performance difference, it disappeared. So that tells me, and then we'll get to that in another area, is that when participation, as measured by hours of practice, um, is the same, then performance, it becomes the same. Okay, so that's general intelligence. Pretty interesting, I thought. Okay, this last one. Is this the last one? It's called the Greater Male Variability Hypothesis. The Greater Male Variability Hypothesis. So this hypothesis uh, hypothesizes that the reason for male dominance at the highest levels of chess is not that men are more intelligent on average, but that male traits show greater statistical variance. Okay, so meaning that they're like in a bell curve, that the bell curve of men's chess ability would have fatter tails. Okay, so that it might be not quite so high in the middle, but that it would be fatter on the top and bottom ends. And that there would be more really terrible players, and there would be more really elite, world class players. So that's the hypothesis. So if correct, that could theoretically produce a disproportionate number of men among the tip top elite players, not just in chess, but in math or STEM stuff as well. So why don't I just move it over here? Wouldn't that be easier? Okay, so that's basically the hypothesis. That men have fatter tails. Okay, and that there's some proposed reasons, like biologically, evolutionarily, like about mating and stuff, that would kind of seeks to explain why that might have developed. Um, that's too far in the weeds, because what we're just talking about, like, does it exist? Does it apply to chess, right? Um, so meta-analyses of behavioral traits across animal species have found little consistent evidence for systematically greater variability in males, suggesting that the phenomenon may be less universal than sometimes assumed. Okay, so it's probably not that big a deal, but let's get more specific. Okay, so chess is actually a really good area, a really good arena to test the greater male variability (GMV), greater male variability (GMV), the GMV hypothesis, because it contains built-in measures of performance, right? Like we have ratings, and we think about them all the time. All right, I am back. I'm back without the puppy. Okay, so we can use chess ratings as a data set that researchers can analyze. And is it because that men are more intelligent at the tails, at the top tail, right? Not, or less intelligent at the bottom tail? Um, is that why? So here is a study from what year? 2006. Harvard, Boston University analyzed ratings from over 250,000 tournament players and found that men had slightly higher average ratings than women, no surprise, but did not show greater variability in ratings distribution. So the empirical data did not support the prediction that male performance in chess exhibits a wider spread of outcomes than female performance. So the researchers concluded instead that the male dominance at the highest levels of chess could largely be explained by participation rates. So once again, completely different study. And here's the quote: even if men and women have the same underlying ability distribution, a larger number of top-rated players will be men if the overall number of men competing is greater. You don't even have to be a statistician to think about this, right? If you think of a bell curve and you've got inside that sample 1,000,000 people, right? And it's organized in a bell curve, and mostly like the middle and you know uh the big chunk of them is right here in the middle. What am I saying? Two standard deviations to either side. It's going to be like most of them, right? It's right in the middle, and then obviously it tapers, right? So if there's 1,000,000 people, maybe you've only got 1% out here is only going to be like 1,000, right? No, 10,000 would be 1%. Say it's a tenth of 1%, 1,000. And then separately, you kind of overlay that bell curve with a second bell curve, but in this second population, just to be dramatic, say there's only 1,000 people in this group, right? You got 1,000,000, and then down here you've got a group of 1,000. And they still have the same bell. It's still the same bell curve, but let's say the top, if there's no difference in variability, and according to Harvard, there is not any difference in variability, then this smaller bell curve, this smaller group, the top 0.1% of 1,000, it'll be one person, right? There'll be one person. So here you got 1,000, here you got 1,000, and here is one. So it's just math. Like if you have more people in one group, there's going to be more at the top end than there would be at the top end of a smaller group. So that's why they say statistically, it's just participation. So when we come to chess, so now we come to chess, if we had, equal participation in terms of, number of players and also hours of practice, that's the big one that we have to include too, then, they'd be very similar. They actually wouldn't be completely similar, and we'll get to that. 94% similar is what we're coming to, but it would be very close, right? It'd be a lot closer than we are now. Okay, so they talk about performance a little bit. This full article is on Substack, and it's on the website. Okay, so let's talk about participation rates. So the interaction between participation rates and the statistical extremes is crucial to understanding elite performance of today. So we have very strong women. We've had Judith, the strongest woman, player, but the sample size is much smaller, right? So research examining chess populations has repeatedly found that the number of participants strongly predicts the number of elite performers. When the pool of competitors increases, the probability that someone from that pool will achieve exceptionally high ratings, as being out on the tail, also increases. So here's a quote from National Geographic magazine. It's a simple statistical fact. that the best performers from a large group are going to be better than the best performers from a small one. Let's look at one more study. This is a study, I think this is, yes, German Chess Federation estimates that participation difference alone could explain the vast majority of observed gender disparity at the high levels of chess. Participation only could explain the vast majority. Okay, so this is Merim Bilalic again, and his group studied the German Chess Federation and attempted to quantify how participation rates influence the number of outstanding men and women in the field. They took a large sample, 120,000 players, which was 113,000 men and 7,000 women. So that's about 16 men for every woman. Okay, so I mean, think about the bell curves, right? This is, we've got and this is not this. Let's see, when is this? Footnote right here. This is 2009. So this is, I mean, it may be a little different. This is, pre-pandemic, pre-Queen's Gambit. So it may be a little different, but right here we have 16 men for every woman. Okay. Researchers found the great discrepancy in top performance of male and female chess players can be largely attributed to a simple statistical fact. More extreme values are found in larger populations. Once participation rates of men and women are controlled for, there is little left for biological, environmental, cultural, or other factors to explain. I'm going to keep going. This is gold. Although the performance of the 100 best German male chess players is better than that of the 100 best German women, we show statistically that 96%, I said 94, I'm sorry, 96% of the observed difference would be expected given the greater number of men playing. So, biology. Does it matter? For chess? No. Average intelligence? There's no difference between male and female players. Spatial rotation differences might not exist. They might be a figment of flawed test design. Even if those differences do exist, those differences are only revealed in one of the 3 diagnostic tests. And if they exist, do they really, they may not matter for chess. 96% of the gap in performance can be explained by participation. That's the big takeaway here. I should maybe put a little thing at the beginning of the video. Got to figure out how to do that. But the point is, obviously we want to explain 100% of the gap in performance, and we will. But 96% can be explained by participation. That means, if you take nothing else from this entire project, if you don't listen to any of the interviews, if you ignore me, participation is the key. It is the golden ticket. Some of these other things that we're going to talk about, stereotype threat, parenting, definitely, are ways that we explain participation and that we improve participation for girls and women and gender minority players. So those are still they're so super important. It's not like they're not a different category. Like most of what we're going to be talking about is participation related. And so recommendations, that's our third prong here for the project, right? Number one, do the research and educate the chess community. Hopefully I'm doing that now. If you've stayed this long, you're a hero and I appreciate you, and, tell all your friends and all of that. Number two, amplify women's voices. I am reaching out to people, and hopefully we'll get some great interviews going. And number three, make recommendations. Okay, so draft recommendation or at least, I mean, we need to start thinking about, okay, well, how do we increase participation? Here's my thought for my town, is women's uh, ladies' night chess club. Okay, we have I have several moms who bring their kids to chess club, and the moms themselves want to play, but their kids are there, and sometimes they have other young children, and it's at the library, and so they kind of their attention is split, right? So I think that's a great idea. You know, internet, tell me what you think. I mean, let's work on this together. This is a problem for all of us. Let's figure out solutions here. Um, Here's something else I've seen in town, and I'm in Portland, Oregon. It's a um, great city. A couple of our local chess clubs include free registration for tournaments for girls. Um, so girls want to come play, they just play free. Um, and I need to ask them if it's working. You know, I do see girls there. I've counted; it's nowhere near half. It is more in line with the 12 or 13% that we have in U.S. chess. It's more around those type of numbers. But they're trying. We need to try more. But anyway, so so there you go. That's it. I'm gonna wrap it up. This has been a long video, but I appreciate everyone staying. And, yeah, next time we're going to be talking about the entrance pipeline, entry into chess. We know that boys enter at greater rates than girls. We're going to talk about why that is. So thanks, everybody, and we'll see you next time.